There's always a reason to always choose joy. There's something deeper that the world can't destroy. Smile when you think you can't. Smile, get up and dance. Smile, there's a bigger plan. The storm only lasts for a while. So smile.
Welcome to Change Happened, Then What? I'm bringing you stories from friends I've met over the past 20 plus years. I chose these stories in this incredible group of people because we all connected over something deeply relatable, something many people aren't always willing to talk about out loud. Each of these stories has touched my heart in a lasting way, and I believe they'll touch yours too. This podcast is here to inspire, to bring hope, and maybe even make you smile. Each of my guests has experienced a pivotal moment in their life, one that has left them asking, now what? Together we'll uncover those moments, walk through their journeys, and embrace all the raw emotions that come with them. So stay tuned for this week's story and allow yourself to truly feel their experiences, the pain, the joy, and everything in between as we navigate this journey together. I'm your host, Heather Holt. Thank you so much for tuning in today. A brief trigger warning for this week's episode. It contains a discussion about sexual abuse and child abduction. Please listen with care and refer to the show notes for resources and support. Welcome to episode 2, Love Against the Odds with Cynthia Hausman. I don't remember exactly when Cynthia and I met, but I know we became fast friends. Maybe it was our shared love of essential oils, or maybe it was the instant connection we had as two women running our own businesses, driven by a strong desire to support one another. Whatever it was, our friendship has stood the test of time. Over the years, we've had many deep conversations. I knew some of the life-changing moments in her journey, but this one took me by surprise. She began by saying, I've never told my story this way before. I had no idea what was coming. And then she said, I was kidnapped and assaulted the summer before my senior year of high school, and my heart just sank. As she spoke, the emotions resurfaced, feelings she hadn't touched in years. Though Cynthia has done an incredible amount of work to heal, the pain and the shame of speaking this truth out loud still linger. Her story is raw, it's real, and it's powerful. So it's with great care and deep respect that I share Cynthia's story with you today. I check in with Cynthia again before I release this episode to make sure she's really ready to share this part of her journey. And she reassures me that yes, the story needs to be told. And this is how Cynthia recalls that day. It started like most days for her.
So I was just working hard, trying to earn money for my, school clothes senior year. And it was very close to the end of the summer. And we had a habit of, the wait staff and other people, we had a habit of gathering at the end of the road, like on this particular road. Oh, it was called the Mountain View House because it had this incredible, incredible view. And we would all just kind of get together after our shift and hang out. And I was having fun. I was with a bunch of friends from work, and I was in some of my new school clothes. And this guy that we had met offered to give us all a ride home. And everyone was like, great, sure. And so I was like, not going to get into this car unless there were other people in the car. I mean, I'm not like a total idiot. And I had met him once before, so yep, he was completely an acquaintance. We all got in the car, but he managed to drop everybody else off first. and I was alone with him in the car. He went down a road that is not the road on the way to my home. And I was just like, dude, we're going the wrong way. So he basically put the car into a ditch. So we had a car accident. I'm using air quotes. We had a car accident. And so, but it was all part of his plan or whatever. It was pretty remote. I knew the road I was on, thankfully, but it was, pitch black. It was a very cold night for August. It was very weirdly cold. And instead of going for help, I tried to get out of the passenger side door, and he stood in the space of the open door, and I was like, oh, God, I'm still thinking it's a car accident, so I'm like, okay, thinking about what to do next and how to get home and da-da-da, and he just straight up punched me right in the face. I just fell back into the car, and that was when he reached into the glove box and took out a weapon, and that was only the beginning of a horrible night, Wow.
At this point, Cynthia's raw emotions begin to surface, and we pause the interview for a moment to take a break. She's overwhelmed, flooded with feelings, as she reflects on an event that happened so long ago, yet it feels as vivid as if it were yesterday. As I listen to it again, I feel the tears well up in my own eyes. When we return to the conversation, Cynthia begins to recall the horror she endured that night. Despite the fear, all she could think about was surviving, finding a way out.
I just did whatever. You fight, and you get beaten and raped, and then you just do whatever they say to just survive. The sun started to come up. I realized I knew exactly where I was, and I was not that far away from my friend's grandparents' house. I pretended to give a shit, I was like, oh, we got to get the car out, whatever, I'm like, so I'm like, I think I saw a house up here, which I knew it was up there, and he's just like, look, if you say anything to them, I will kill them. I was like, okay, no problem.
Cynthia goes on to tell me about the day that followed, the moment she returned home to her mother. At first, her mom thought she was just a teenager who hadn't come home the night before. But the moment she saw her daughter, everything changed. In an instant, realization hit. Something terrible had happened. The look on her mother's face is forever etched in Cynthia's memory. Then came the questions. The intense interrogation by the state police, and the trip to the hospital where her body would become evidence. And this wasn't just any hospital. It was a hospital that had never performed a forensic exam before. She wasn't just a patient, she was the first.
They had to literally go down line by line. They didn't have a forensic nurse, and they're like, okay, take the comb and comb through the pubic hairs 10 times. They took all my clothes, because it was all evidence and everything, right? I didn't have anything to go home in, and they wanted me to go home in like this paper bunny suit, whatever. My mom went home and got clothes.
Cynthia and I talked a while longer about how deeply traumatizing this experience was for her. She never wanted another woman to feel the way she did in those vulnerable moments. So, in true Cynthia fashion, she did something about it. When she opened her own business, she implemented a clothing drop-off at her spa so that women who had to undergo this kind of forensic exam would have something clean and comforting to wear home after their clothes were taken in as evidence. It was a simple gesture, but one filled with immense care, a small act of kindness, born from pain, turned into purpose. I decided to see what I could find out for research on this topic, And this is what I found. There is a form of secondary trauma that many survivors of sexual violence experience, and it happens when they have to go to the hospital for a forensic exam, often referred to as a rape kit. As if surviving the assault itself wasn't already unimaginably painful, they're now asked to relive parts of that trauma all over again, physically, emotionally, and mentally, under bright lights, with strangers, in a cold and clinical environment. I've listened to and spoken with many survivors, and they often describe this part of the process as re-traumatizing. It's something that isn't talked about enough, but it matters deeply. And although there isn't a lot of research on whether hospitals are getting better about how this affects the survivor, I was able to find this information. Research indicates that sexual assault is the leading cause of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Approximately 50% of women who have been sexually assaulted develop PTSD, with 94% experiencing symptoms during the first 2 weeks after the assault. It's estimated that less than 1/3 of sexual assaults are reported annually, with some estimates as low as 5%. This underreporting can lead to delays in seeking medical care, which may exacerbate psychological distress. And in some cases, survivors face significant delays in obtaining forensic exams. And when this happens due to travel time or wait time, the survivor has to wait hours without being allowed to shower or change clothes, also increasing their psychological trauma. These findings underscore the importance of trauma-informed care during forensic examinations to minimize the additional distress for survivors. I just wanted to take a moment to highlight this topic because, as hard as it is to talk about, I think it's a very important topic to talk about for all of the survivors out there. Now back to Cynthia's story. She then remembers something she had seen on TV just about
6 months earlier. There was a show on television. I don't even know why I watched it, but it was a show about women confronting their rapists. And it was heavy. It was like a news show, right? And so there were like 3 or 4 different women, different situations, but they shared their full story about exactly how it went down so bravely and how they survived. But that show kept me alive because there were things that they did that I did that kept me alive.
This traumatic event happened just days before school was set to begin, and Cynthia had no choice but to return for her senior year. Still processing what happened, not feeling like herself, and carrying the weight of it all in both her heart and her body. She didn't feel 100%. She didn't feel seen, and she certainly didn't feel like the girl she was before. But during that difficult time, she'll tell me about the first time she met a boy named Andrew, someone younger than her, who one day changed the course of her life in ways she would never imagine.
I have 2 black eyes, and so I'm wearing sunglasses because everybody just thinks think I'm so cool, but I'm actually just trying to hide my black eyes. So I was a senior, he was a freshman. Didn't he just look like a little child with red hair and who talked about Soldier of Fortune magazine all the time? I was a little bit, why is this kid even talking to me, after what I just went through? But he, I think, recognized some of what was going on with me, whereas other people knew but never said anything. I think he just got it from some personal experience of his own. He just really liked me, and I was, sort of passingly polite or whatever, but I was just like not interested, not interested in talking to anybody.
We'll talk more about Drew later in this story. But first, we need to talk about how Cynthia got into the sport of luge to truly understand what drives her. This traumatic experience shaped Cynthia in ways few could ever see from the outside. She tells me the polished version of how she found her way to luge, the one she shared for years. You know, the version that didn't include this part of her past, the version that skipped the darkness because admitting that this experience was her fuel felt too raw, too vulnerable, too exposing. That story, it was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. It was the facade, the version that felt safe enough to tell, the one people could hear without looking too closely. But today, Cynthia's telling us her whole story.
The real reason is because of what happened, and I made the decision that those were the people that I wanted to be around. I'd be safe, I'd be learning, I'd be pushing myself to see, what all I could do, but something about luge and bobsled just really called me. I mean, it was dangerous, which I like speed, and it was individual in some aspects, but also team sport in other aspects, and everyone is using all of their energy to be the best. Just a singular focus on doing things the right way with sportsmanship and really becoming a master of yourself, your performance, and always working on yourself, always finding ways to improve, and being around a community of people that are all going after that very high ideal. It's incredible. It's incredible. And it's extremely difficult. I participated first in luge, and then I was recruited for women's bobsled. I was part of the movement to make women's bobsled Olympic in 2002. I'm extremely proud of that. I learned that even people that are, going for Olympic dreams and whatever, they're just like everybody else. I'm incredibly proud of my time there. And then I moved on and I told the story of luge as the international director of social media for the International Federation.
As you can already tell, Cynthia is a woman of unwavering determination and unstoppable drive. This traumatic event she experienced as a teenager didn't just leave a scar, it ignited a fire, a fierceness, a relentless will to live boldly and fight for what matters. When Cynthia sets her mind to something, she makes it happen. Now, let's get back to Drew, because that boy she met in high school, he's not just a memory. He's someone who will reappear in her life again and again, and their connection is anything but ordinary.
A friend said, "Hey, Andrew is working at this pizza place. You should go say hi." And I was like, "Oh, Andrew? Yeah. Okay. Why? Really?" Anyway, so I go, and it's like when the dorky guy turns into the hot guy, and he came on the phone, and I was like, "Oh my, what?" I was like, oh no. And we just really wanted to be together, but we couldn't because he was already married. 10 years later, I put on Facebook, when Facebook was still just about talking to your friends. I was like, "Hey, I'm at the spa. I really want to steak dinner tonight. Anybody want to go, And I get this message from him, and I was like, "Oh, what?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll be there in an hour." And I'm like, "All right, awesome." And so he was separated from his wife, available. I was available. I was then divorced. We just were so in love. Oh my God. We're just ridiculous. Anyway. And then I was going off to Russia to cover the Sochi Games, do social media for the International Luge Federation through the games. And so I was going to be gone for like a month. And I left, and then he broke up with me. I was stunned. I was like, "What?" And he said that he had liver cancer and that he was going to go back to the wife that he was separated from. and end his days with her because he felt like that was the right thing to do. And personally, I thought he was lying. I was at a conference in Atlanta, and I get this message. I kid you not. The message above it is from 10 years ago, so 2014, right? So cheap. So it is him breaking up with me, and the very next message in August says something like, "Hi, would you consider having coffee with a guy that has a new liver and a new outlook on life," or something to that effect. And I was just like, what? Are you kidding? I literally did not think this person was walking their earth anymore. And I was like, at this really important conference, no, this is too much. I can't think about this. I can think about this in a couple of days. I end up at the hotel. Everyone was gone. Like, because of my flights and everything, I have to stay an extra night. So I'm in the pool, and I call my best friend, and I talk with her about it. She's like, you need to ask some important questions. Then, you need to talk to him. And I was like, okay. So I called him. I talked to him, and it was like, oh, my God. So I, what's the state of your relationships? What is how is your health? Yeah. All these important questions. It's beyond puppy love. Everyone says, oh, Cynthia, you just love being in love. You just love love. And I've learned a lot more about loving myself better because he loves me better. It's incredible.
We finish our conversation by talking about their hopes and dreams, about how happy they are now, finally together after years of orbiting around each other. For decades, their lives overlapped in quite serendipitous ways, passing each other by without even knowing it. They were at the same concerts in the same towns, living parallel lives. But the timing just wasn't right until now. And just before we ended, Cynthia shared a story, a simple car ride with her son. But it was one of those quite beautiful conversations that stay with you. And I just had to include it because moments like that, those little pieces of love, honesty, and connection are what this podcast is really about.
The best part is I was in the car with my kid, and he said, Mom, why is it we always seem to have the most incredible conversations in the car? I don't know. He said, watching the way Drew loves you is incredible. He's like, I hope that I get to love someone like that in my lifetime. And I'm like, wow. And get that in return? I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm. Cynthia's life journey is a true testament to the strength of both the physical and the emotional body, what we can endure and how we can still choose to move forward. She didn't remain in the role of victim or even just survivor. She chose to rise, to live, to thrive. And when I asked her if there was anything else she wanted to share about her story, she spoke directly to this point.
I can't just be a survivor. I've got to do something. And, maybe it's adult child of an alcoholic stuff, leaving a legacy, doing good, being a good member of my community, taking care of who I can, enjoying life, living life, creating, manifesting. Know that it's our conscious choices that can make those things happen. I will never be a victim.
And then I asked her what makes her smile every day.
I have a roof over my head. I have love in my life. I have a wonderful family and friends. I mostly have my health. I have everything that I need.
As we wrapped up, I asked Cynthia the one question I always save for the end. If there's one thing you'd like our listeners to take away from your story today, just one thing, what would it be?
I think we need to hold some space in our hearts for the people that have experienced violence. Everyone deserves love and care
because sometimes it's that one final truth that lingers the longest.
There's always a reason to always choose joy. There's something deeper that the world can't destroy. Smile when you think you can't. Smile, get up and dance. Smile, there's a bigger plan. The storm only lasts for a while. So smile.
Thank you for tuning in to Change Happened, Then What? I hope you found this week's episode meaningful and inspiring. If you've experienced a change happen moment and feel ready to share your story to help others on their journey, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach out anytime at changepodcast@yahoo.com. Our theme music is Smile by Sidewalk Prophets from their album, Things That Got Us Here. You can find them at sidewalkprophets.com. As with most independent podcasts, this podcast is funded by listener support. If you'd like to contribute, you can do so at changehappenedpodcast.com under the support tab. Your support is invaluable and helps us continue to bring meaningful content. If a financial contribution isn't an option for you at this time, following and subscribing is a huge help. You can do this on Apple Music, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Other ways to support is to share an episode with someone who needs a smile. Maybe your babysitter, your mechanic, or, of course, Grandma. What's she up to now? Hopefully she's planting her seeds early. Gardening season is just around the corner. To find resources related to this week's episode or to learn more about the show and its guests, please visit changehappenedpodcast.com. You can also stay connected and follow us on Instagram at Change Happened Podcasts for updates, behind-the-scene moments, and more inspiring content. Change Happened, Then What is written, edited, and produced by me, Heather Holt, at Holt Hill Studios, with the help of our two fur babies, Waylon and Dalton. Until next time, keep smiling.